If somebody told you you can be a millionaire, no matter what your age is, no matter what your economic background is, no matter what your financial state is at this exact second, would you believe it? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Do you believe you can become a millionaire? Do you believe that you can become wealthy? Do you believe financial success is within your grasp? And I'm not specifically talking to the people right now who would answer that question. I already am. I already am wealthy. I already am a financial success. I'm more interested in reaching the people who answer that question with a scoff, with a laugh, with a shoulder shrug, with a dismissal, as if to say, that could never, ever happen to me, or I don't believe that could ever happen, or my circumstances are so dire, or I've made so many mistakes in life, I'm too old, can't do it, that would never happen to me. Well, good news is coming, because that's completely false. If you're a Christian, that might be the devil whispering that in your ear, right? To steal your hope, to steal your dreams, to steal God's glory working through you. But before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That is Pastor Jack Hibbs' Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church, his church's faith-based news outreach, RLN. Great product, great podcasts, great things to read over there. Check it out. Bold and Blunt, very happy to say, very grateful, very humble to say, is among the lineup over there. You can also get Bold and Blunt at Washington Times, where if you are already a subscriber to Bold and Blunt, my newsletter, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you subscribe to my stuff and you get it delivered to your email box, and you know what? If you're a paying subscriber to the newspaper, I want to say thank you too, because so many of us on the conservative side of things, we always, and rightly so, criticize the media. Right? I mean, the media hates us. The media hates Christians. The media hates conservatives. The media hates people who understand the Constitution. And that's pretty much Bold and Blunt right there, right? That's all the listeners of Bold and Blunt. The media hates us all. But when we find a media source that actually delivers what it promises, or delivers stuff that's actually useful and not with an anti-America, anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, anti-conservative, anti-Christian angle, then, it's great to support those sites. So if you're a paying subscriber to Washington Times or to my newsletter, kudos to you. Really appreciate it. And if you aren't subscribed yet to either the Washington Times or to Bold and Blunt, my newsletter, I would invite you to go to the bottom of WashingtonTimes.com, find the newsletter section, click on it, and find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. Just enter your email address and you'll get delivered right to your email box. My commentaries, my podcasts, the video podcasts I do, and whatever else I produce that week at Washington Times. And you'll get it in your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or thereabouts. Sometimes I notice they don't go out exactly when they're supposed to, but they do go out. Yes, they do. You'll see them. And of course, you may also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. The United States added 1,000 new millionaires a day in 2024. This comes from CNBC, June 19th of this year. This is the key point section, just reading from it. America's millionaire population grew by 379,000 for a total of 23.8 million, the most of any country, according to a new study by UBS. 23.8 million Americans are millionaires. Growing strong. Much of that wealth growth came from strong markets and a stable dollar, which both have been disrupted so far in 2025 by I don't even want to read this part. I should have read ahead before I wasted your time. Let me tell you what CNBC says. Both of which have been disrupted so far in 2025 by a trade war and recession fears. Well, you know what? You can just cross that out, trade war and recession fears, and insert Jerome Powell, right? Because all the gloom and doom and dire predictions about President Donald Trump's financial planning for the country and part of his MAGA, Make America Great Again agenda that has brought tariffs to other nations, by the way, that have taken advantage of America for years and years and years. And oh, did I say years and years? And nobody has had the political will and determination and other things. Another word that just springs to mind that I don't know if I can say, so I'll just leave it. Nobody's had the will and determination to take on these other nations that have exploited America's generosity and are oh so generous. That's a word that is code for imbalanced, but oh so generous trade agreements. Well, nobody's had the will to do that until President Donald Trump. And now we have a situation where all financial signs show that the interest rate should be cut. And yet that Fed chair, he just doesn't want to do it. Makes you wonder if politics are at play here, right? Anyhow, let's just leave that little section out. Much of that wealth growth came from strong markets and a stable dollar. We'll just leave it at that, CNBC. And the third key point, even among the world's richest, there is a wealth gap, UBS found. Well, boo-hoo to the wealth gap for the billionaires. We don't care about that. That's not really part and parcel of what I wanted to discuss today. So talking about wealth for the average American, wealth creation for those with little financial means, those who were raised in terrible conditions, those who were raised in broken homes, homes with addicted parents, homes with no parents, those who were raised in the worst of worst circumstances, abhorrent living conditions. Can these Americans become millionaires? Can these Americans achieve wealth? Yes. Why not? Yes. Here's why I think so, biblically speaking. Because God endows each and every one of his creations, meaning his children, meaning males and females. And that's it, by the way. This is veering off a little bit, different topic, different day, but there are only two sexes, male and female. But God endows each of his creations with certain talents, certain skills, certain gifts of the Holy Spirit, right? And with a certain mission, a certain purpose in life. And part of that mission and purpose is to achieve great things for his glory. So that doesn't mean that God has in mind for every one of his creations to become a millionaire. I say millionaire and equate it with wealth just for the sake of moving the discussion along. But wealth to an individual can mean different things. Prosperity to an individual can mean different things. Success between individuals can mean different things. So God's goal is for each and every one of his creations to achieve, to succeed at the mission, at the plan that he has given each of us. And if you go through life and you do what God's mission is for you, and you obey him, and you follow in his footsteps, and you follow in the path that he has laid for you, then there's no way you cannot achieve success. There's no way that you cannot prosper. So this is where it becomes debatable. Does that mean that God wants you to become a millionaire? I don't think that's God's goal. But if your intent in life is to have financial security, I think that's something that God wants for each and every one of his individuals, in each and every one of his individual creations. God didn't make male and female to be impoverished and to, you know, just live in the dumps day to day, paycheck to paycheck. So if you follow what God has for you in life, the plans that he has made for you, then I think it's inevitable that you're going to achieve prosperity as God has defined prosperity for your life. And that may mean different things to different people. Some people see prosperity as meaning a millionaire or a multimillionaire. Others see prosperity as raising children to be functioning, successful members of society, and to send them out into the world debt-free without a burden of $100,000 college loan and so forth. So there's different levels of what it means to be wealthy in God's eyes, in God's mind. But I think everybody who obeys God in life is destined for prosperity as he has defined it for you. So jumping back to the more secular world, right? So does that mean everybody is capable of becoming a millionaire? Well, in America, which was founded on the idea of God-given individual rights and liberties, I say still yes. If that is your goal in life, to become financially prosperous, as long as your motivations for that prosperity are correct, I don't see how you can fail. I think you need to be rooted in something more than a pursuit of the dollar. I think you need to have a larger vision of what you want those dollars for. But I do believe that each and every individual, no matter your circumstances, no matter your background, and no matter the struggles that you have faced or continue to face or will face in the future, no matter all that, if you walk in God's path for you and you put into practice sound biblical principles and you have the right motivations for desiring financial security, and you have defined financial security in your life as becoming a millionaire, I think it is 100% doable. That being said, July 9th, from Charles Schwab Corporation, their press room. Americans say it takes more money to be financially comfortable now than it did a year ago, according to a Schwab survey. So, in the year 2025, the average net worth it takes to be wealthy, and wealthy is in quotation marks, because again, it's defined differently by different people, but just generically speaking, wealthy. Schwab goes on to write, Americans believe it takes $839,000 to be, quote, financially comfortable, end quote, according to this organization's 2025 Modern Wealth Survey, which is an annual survey that examines Americans' perspectives on saving, spending, investing, and wealth. This $839,000 is up from $778,000 reported last year. So, Americans think it takes $839,000 now to be financially comfortable, up from $778,000 just a year ago. And how optimistic are Americans that they can achieve that level of finances? Well, May 7th, 2025, from Pew Research. Growing share of U.S. adults say their personal finances will be worse a year from now, amid a downbeat economic outlook. Again, Jerome Powell, and sagging consumer confidence. That's debatable. Americans' views about their personal financial situation have remained relatively stable over the past year. A majority, Pew writes, say they're in only fair 40% or poor 17% shape, according to an April 2025 Pew Research Center survey. Fewer say they're in excellent 7%, or good shape, 36%. This is very similar to how the public felt a year ago. Well, I have a guest today. If your attitude is of the larger majority who think that a year from now your finances are going to be worse, or 2 years from now they're going to be even worse, and 5 years from now you're going to be even worse, if you're of that mentality, my guest today has a lot of words of wisdom for you, and one of his key points is attitude, attitude, attitude. Erik Weir is a financial expert who speaks frequently to audiences about how to grow their wealth. And he has just written this very excellent book that is aimed at helping every American, no matter your background, no matter your struggles, how to achieve financial prosperity. Erik, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blonde. It is so great to have you here.
It's my pleasure entirely, and thank you.
Well, what a great title for your book, Who's Eating Your Pie? And then the subtitle, Essential Financial Advice That Will Transform Your Life. What kind of information are we talking about here?
Bold stuff here, yeah.
Do tell.
What I talk about in the book, and Who's Eating Your Pie is the illustration of the pie on the front. And how I started it is my son asked me, Dad, he was like 8, and his mom just gave him an apple pie. Daddy, tell me about taxes. And I was writing my estimated quarterly payment. I wasn't in the greatest of moods, right? So I looked at him, I grabbed my fork, and I went a big motion, and I took like 1/3 of his pie and ice cream and ate it right in front of him. And he was like, oh my gosh, what's that? I said, that's taxation. And then
Wow.
and then I went in for a second bite, and he blocked me, and I said, that's planning. So that's the history of the name. But what I talk about more than that is Who's Eating Your Pie is it's usually us, because we cap ourselves with limiting thoughts and the people we choose to associate with.
That's a very good point. So tell basically what we're doing wrong by, capping ourselves. So is that sort of a way of thinking about finances that hampers us? And talk a little bit about who we associate with.
Yeah, so it's really both. So what happens is, you see, some of us, didn't have the parent of the year, right, growing up. So we may have heard like, you'll never amount to anything, or you're just like your mother, or you're just like your father, or I can't wait for you to leave the house. So when you have those sort of thoughts as a child, they follow you into adulthood, and you oftentimes you develop a fear of failure, a fear of mistakes, and it limits you. And your dreams, they aren't that big. So when you talk to a 5-year-old kid, I'm going to be an astronaut, I'll be a physicist, whatever they're going to be. You talk to 10, 20 years old, it gets smaller and smaller. And by the time you're 40, you just want a good night's sleep. So what happens is your world shrinks. And my first chapter is Permission to Dream. And I wrote the book during COVID because I saw people being disconnected from one another, depressed, down, the world's going to change. And I was like, how can I write a book that would be encouraging and give tools to have a more productive life?
What a great
focus
service.
on 5 F's. It's faith, and that's how you see the world, or your belief system. And that's faith, family, finance, and friends. Those are the 5 F's that we all should think about.
I love that. I love that idea. Give yourself permission to dream, right? Because not only is that American, but I think it strikes to the core of exactly what you said. So many people's upbringings have limited what they believe that they themselves can accomplish. So, all right, let's say you're dreaming big, but your reality is nowhere near where your dreams are, right? You're in debt. You're in a low-wage job. What do you do to build?
Yeah. So I call that, I have another chapter called The Power of Clarity. And what I mean by that is when I say permission to dream, it's not fantasize, it's dream. Because hope is not a strategy. Only strategy is a strategy. But if I'm with somebody and they're in debt, and they owe $4,000 on a credit card, and they're making $17 an hour, like, I'm never getting out of this. I said, well, we'll just stop. Just imagine if you couldn't fail, if you had the education and resources, what would you attempt to do? And then I attempt to have them look higher. I call it like dreaming above the clouds. And then you set a goal. And then once you get clear on that goal, and you take time to plan it, if you have clarity, you can attract people, resources, funding, just about anything that you need. And if you look at like Elon Musk, for example, he has clarity on what he's wanted to do. People thought it was silly, long shots, but he accomplished it because of clarity.
So let's just say you're of the faith community that sort of discourages the idea of seeking wealth for wealth's sake. How do you address that?
It goes back to the 5 F's, and I have, I think everyone should. I think the charity starts at home, and you should give back. So wealth for wealth's sake is a mistake. And in the 5 F's, I talk about there's no such thing, in my view, as a balanced life. You may have a life of harmony. What I mean by that, if you're a new mom, you're not balanced. You're probably not going to exercise. You're probably overwhelmed. So you can't have balance on all 5 F's. But that's the season of life. If you end up pursuing wealth for wealth's sake, then your focus is on wealth your entire life, and you ignore your family, you ignore your faith, you ignore your fitness, and those areas ultimately they consume you. So whatever you ignore, it consumes you in the end.
So, do your tools include that dreaded B word, budget, right? I mean, a lot of people just don't like to do that.
Sure. I believe in budgets, but I also believe in growth. So what I try to say is in categories. So I think you should be charitable for some percentage, right? But then I think you shouldn't be wasteful. And if you look at your time, most people spend 2 to 4 hours a day on social media. If you could redirect half of that time into a skill set or learning something or making yourself better, you're surprised at how quickly you can make change. And the biggest thing that I see that holds people back is they set goals that are unrealistic. I'll give you, where you say, hey, I want to lose 15 pounds this month. It's possible, but it's not likely, right? So, but maybe I'll lose 3 pounds this month is possible, and in 5 months I can lose 15 pounds. So what I talked about in my book is it's not it's a massive change over time, but it's not a massive change tomorrow. Can you just do like maybe 1% better each day? Most people believe they can do 1% better. And if you compound on that over 1 year, you make like a 10x change.
So dream big, but don't get carried away by your dreams where you forget you have to take the little steps to achieve. Is that basically right?
Exactly. And I have a workbook that goes with it. You prioritize tasks. You think about what your major objective is. You work on one component of that tirelessly each day. And you look at what are my top 3 goals for the week, for the day, for the month, and for the year. And then you do that every day. And they can change, and you may not get everything done in one day, and that happens all the time, but you just readjust.
Okay, so if someone out there is listening, and just say you're talking to somebody who has made a lot of financial mistakes in life and just feels like they're drowning right now, can that person dream big? Say, they're middle age or even older. Can they dream big if they want to, say, be a millionaire, or is that just out of their reach? Can anyone be a millionaire?
It's absolutely. I mean, I had a guy who came to me who was where I was speaking at a youth conference, a marriage conference, and he'd just gone through bankruptcy. And I said, what would you do if you couldn't fail? He said, I would buy this textile mill. And this is in 2009. He was in real estate, right? He lost everything. Lived with his in-laws, didn't have a car, didn't have anything. And I said, well, why do you want a textile mill? He said, because the contents, the wood, the copper, and the brick are worth more than what they're asking for sale. And I said, well, why don't you own it right now? He said, I don't have the money. And I'm like, well, that's not the point. Why don't you own it? And I said, you've got to think strategically. And so I said, make an all-cash offer, which he did, 1/4 of the price he wanted, which he did. And I said, call the people who buy, old wood called heart pine. Call people who buy bricks that are 100 years old. And buy copper, recycle it. He did all that, and then I said, just have him put a deposit down with an attorney. And long story short, he did that. In 30 days, he was able to pay cash and have money left over, and then have property for free. Did that in a short period of time. It was only because of his massive setback of bankruptcy that he had to think differently. And if he didn't have that happen, he'd still be a real estate agent today in North Carolina. But instead, he's now retired.
What advice would you give people who are living right now paycheck to paycheck, right? And they really, already have a second job, and they're already doing what they think they can in terms of setting aside a few dollars here and there?
It's just thinking differently. Do you detail cars? Do you go to yard sales and you learn, like, I'll give you an example, like a concert, the 1980s concert shirt. You buy it at a yard sale for $4, as you sell it on eBay for $95. Can you do that? And there's a company called Shabby Chic, right? And you've heard of Shabby Chic. It started in San Francisco. It was a single mom of 4 kids, broke. She went to garage sales, bought wicker furniture, painted it, and then beat it with a chain, and then just sanded it up rough spots to make it look sort of shabby. And she'd pay $10, $15, $20 and sell it for $500 the next week per piece. So, and again, it's just what, and everyone has a different skill set and different things to do, but is there something that you could do that would be different and reframe it? The problem most people face is your box is small. And let's say you're a mechanic in an automobile. You're just thinking, I need to be a mechanic for somebody else to make another $1 an hour. Well, is there another way to reframe that?
Huh. So basically, you're trying to get people to tap into a more entrepreneurial way of thinking.
Yes. You're not. We're all entrepreneurs. So if I work as an auto mechanic at a car dealership, I have to produce 3 or 4 times what they pay me in value for the owner of that business. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what if I could do the same thing for myself? Or do it a different way? Can I create more value?
So is it possible to work for somebody, to work for a company and become independently rich? Or do you really... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely you can. What you would do is just think, hey, do they have a 401k program? Can I participate? I'll put $100 a month. Maybe they match it. Can I save? Can I do side hustles? 100% it is. But I always remind people that, wealth for wealth's sake, is a bad goal. If you can link it to what it would do for you, what it can do for your family and your community, it's much more motivating.
So I've been peppering you with questions because this is fascinating to me. But about your book, what is it? What is it that you want people to know about your book? What was it? Were there stories of inspiration that you cover, or just talk a little bit about some of the chapters?
Yeah, for me, I was a kid at age 5. I was in a car wreck and had a brain injury and couldn't speak. And I started listening to a guy named Zig Ziglar.
Yes.
That said, you check up from the neck up. And I listened to him over and over and over again. And I just began to say, how could I, at 5 years old, begin to, I had set a goal to buy a car when I was 13, then to buy my first house and make my first million. All those I set at that age, and I hit those targets. But my first business was a lemonade stand. But it turns out when your parents go through bankruptcy, you're in a rented house, and you're 3 doors down from elementary school, that's a great location to sell lemonade. And particularly when you stutter, you get tips. so I was knocking, $70, $80 a day out in 1972, which is like $600 a day today, right?
Wow.
And I mean, you couldn't keep me away from the curb. And it's the same thing, cutting grass. The first job I had at 11 was cutting grass. I have grass allergies, and I sunburn real easily. And I was itchy and eye swollen, so I'm like, gee, it stinks. But I found kids in the neighborhood that would cut. I'd pay them $5 a yard, and I'd charge 15, and then I would just sell yard jobs. And when you go door to door, and you're like, hey, can I cut your grass? $15.
Wow.
They say yes. Yes, you can. So I'm like, sure. Well, here's Johnny. He's going to cut your yard. I'm going to go talk to the next neighbor. And next thing you know, you're cutting grass. So we all have limits we're dealt in life, things that set us back. How can you reframe your unique lemon into lemonade?
Oh, that's perfect. That's a great thought. So let's just wrap up with common mistakes. What would you say the biggest money mistakes people are making nowadays?
And if there's a money mistake, I've made it.
I think we all have,
at,
right?
least, at least once, right?
Right.
So, I mean, the first thing I when I made money, as a young guy, I bought consumables. I bought a watch, I bought a car, I bought stuff that wouldn't change in value, right? It just goes down right after I buy it, or clothing, or nice shoes. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But if your purpose is to create financial stability for yourself in the future, do some of that. But then make investments in a mutual fund or the S&P 500 or something, or rent. Begin to do something that you can do to add value. And when you first get started, your best investment might be I'm going to spend $30 and buy a squeegee and a bucket and some soap, and I want to wash windows for $100 of a store. That would be your best investment, right? So just, what can you do to create return and margin that's inside your skill set?
And anybody can put these principles to use and see prosperity in their life.
That's been my experience, and I've talked to people who were in a halfway house. They've had a criminal record or some kind of record, and I said, what's really popular is authenticity. And I said, and the guy washed windows. And I said, can you go to your town, knock on the door of a small business, and say, hey, I'm starting my life over from scratch, and I need work, and it looks like you've got dirty windows. Would you pay me $75 and I'm going to clean your windows? And if you don't like my job, it's free. And he goes, he did that all day long. And then the next week, he found another person with a record, said, you clean windows and I'll sell window cleaning jobs. And then he made a business out of that. Didn't have to have a degree, didn't have to have any special training, but he had to face rejection. He had to go to businesses and risk them saying no. But enough said yes that it was helpful and it changed his life.
Wow, I just love your messages. And you know what? Speaking of authenticity, you can tell you are authentic. It just bleeds from your voice. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, Erik Weir, who's Eating Your Pie, essential financial advice that will transform your life. I assume you can get it anywhere.
Yes, you can. And if you want to reach me, follow me on Instagram. It's at Erik Weir, ERIKWEIR. If you DM me, I'll personally reply.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to test that. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erik. You have a wonderful day.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
What great advice. What a great chat. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed chatting with Erik. I want to thank you for listening. Remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. Meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.